Originali. Bentornati a Lingue Originali su Caffè Italia. Chi segue questo ciclo di trasmissioni dall'inizio della stagione, dai primi episodi usciti nel mese di ottobre, già conosce Alan Bennett, scrittore, drammaturgo, sceneggiatore e persino attore britannico. È nato a Leeds, nello Yorkshire, precisamente nel quartiere operaio di Harmley, ed è figlio di un macellaio. Dopo gli studi secondari, grazie a una borsa di studio, ha frequentato l'Exeter College, dove ha conseguito la laurea in storia e dove è rimasto come ricercatore e docente di storia medievale per diversi anni. Poi la svolta, l'abbandono del mondo accademico e la decisione di dar voce alla sua passione per il teatro. Dall'inizio di questo ciclo di trasmissioni vi abbiamo proposto diversi suoi monologhi tratti dalla raccolta Talking Heads del 1987-1988, che è diventata anche una serie televisiva molto apprezzata nel Regno Unito, prodotta dalla BBC, tanto per la televisione quanto per la radio. Oggi Marco Piovaz ci propone, nella prima di 3 parti, una storia, un altro monologo dal titolo A Lady of Letters. La cosa molto particolare della raccolta Talking Heads è che i monologhi che contiene sono tanto comici quanto ironici nel tipico umorismo british, quanto drammatici. Ma anche l'ironia non manca in A Lady of Letters, che è la storia di Irene Ruddock, una signora di mezza età, single, diremmo noi italiani senza peli sulla lingua, e pronta a esprimere la sua opinione di persona o per iscritto per denunciare quei mali sociali che lei vede o crede di vedere intorno a sé. Ed allora, a Lingue Originali, dalla voce di Marco Piovaz per l'appuntamento in lingua inglese, a voi la prima parte di A Lady of Letters di Alan Bennett.
I can't say the service was up to scratch. It smacked of the conveyor belt. In fact, I wrote to the crematorium. I said I thought the hallmark of a ceremony of that nature was reverence, whereas the word that kept coming into my mind was brisk. Moreover, I added, grief-stricken people do not expect to emerge from the chapel of rest to find grown men skulking in the rhododendrons with tub ends in their mouths. If the hearse drivers must smoke, then facilities should be provided. I'd heard good reports of this crematorium, but I hoped they would agree with me that on this occasion it had let itself down. Of course, if I'd happened to be heartbroken, I'd have felt much worse. I didn't let on to the crematorium because I thought it might get them off the hook. But I actually didn't know her all that well. I used to see her getting on the 37 and we'd pass the time of day. She lost her mother round about the same time I lost mine. She had a niece in Australia and I have the one cousin in Canada. Then she went in for gas-fired central heating just a few weeks before I did. So one way and another we covered a lot of the same ground. I'd spent years thinking she was called Hammersley, which was way off the mark, because her name turns out to be Pringle. There was a picture of her in the Evening Post. She'd been a big voluntary worker, with details of the funeral on the Wednesday afternoon, which is the one time I'm dangling my feet a bit. So I thought I'd get out my little maroon coat and put in an appearance. At least it's an outing. And I was glad I'd gone, but as I say, the ceremony was a bit lackluster and topped off by this young fella's smoking, so I thought the least I could do was right. Anyway, I had a charming letter back from the Director of Operations, a Mr. Widdop. He said he was most grateful I've drawn this matter to his attention, and while he was aware the practice sometimes went on, if he personally caught anybody smoking, he would jump on the culprits with both feet. He knew I would appreciate that discipline within the chapel precincts presented special problems, as it wasn't always convenient to tear a strip off somebody when there were grief-stricken people knocking about. What he personally preferred to do was to keep a low profile, then come down on the offenders like a ton of bricks once the coast was clear. With regard to my remarks about facilities, they had no plans to provide a smoking area in the Chapel of Rest in the foreseeable future, as I must understand that space was at a premium, and top of the list of priorities at the present moment was the provision of a temporary temple for the use of racial minorities. However, he would bear my remarks in mind, and if I were to come across any similar infringements in the future, I was not to hesitate to get in touch. I wrote him a little letter back, thanking him for his prompt and courteous reply, and saying that though I hope not to be making any further visits to the crematorium in the near future, joke, I took his point. I also dropped a line to the relatives, care of the undertakers, saying that I was an acquaintance of Miss Pringle, had been present at the ceremony, and had taken the liberty of entering into correspondence with the crematorium over the unfortunate lapse. I enclosed a copy of Mr. Widdop's reply, but they didn't write back, which I can understand, because the one thing death always entails is a mass of correspondence. When Mother died, I had 53 letters. Besides, they may not have even seen them smoking. They were probably blinded with grief. I see we've got a new couple moved in opposite. Don't look very promising. The kiddie looks filthy. A card from the opticians this morning, saying that their records indicate that it's 2 years since they supplied me with spectacles, and that by now they would almost certainly be in need of verification, and suggesting I call at my earliest convenience. I thought that was nice, so I took my trusty platinum and dashed off an answer forthwith. I said I thought it was very considerate of them to have kept me in mind, and while I was quite satisfied with my spectacles at the present moment, I was grateful to them for drawing the matter to my attention, and in the event of my noticing any deterioration, I would in due course get in touch with them. It stood me in good stead, has this pen. Mother bought it to me the last time she was able to get over to Harrogate. It's been a real friend. Angie, her name is. I heard him shout of her as I went by en route for the post office. He was laid out underneath his car, wanting a spanner, and she came out, transistor in one hand, kiddie in the other. Thin little thing, bruise on its arm. I thought, well, you've got a car, you've got a transistor, it's about time you invested in some curtains. She can't be more than 20, and by the look of it, she's expecting another. I passed the place where there was the broken step I wrote to the council was a danger to the public. Little ramp there now. Access for the disabled. Whenever I pass, I think, well, that's thanks to you, Irene. My monument, that ramp. Only some dog had gone and done its business right in the middle of it. I'm sure there's more of that than there used to be. I had a little away day in London last year, and it was dog dirt everywhere. I spotted some on the pavement right outside Buckingham Palace. I wrote to the Queen about it. Had a charming letter back from a lady-in-waiting, saying that Her Majesty appreciated my interest and that my letter had been passed on to the appropriate authority. The upshot eventually is I get a long letter from the Chief Cleansing Officer to Westminster City Council apologising profusely and enclosing a rundown of their highway and maintenance budget. That's been my experience generally. People are only too grateful to have these things pointed out. The keynote is participation. Of course, I wrote back to thank him, and then blow me if I didn't get another letter thanking me for mine. So I wrote back saying I hadn't been expecting another letter and there was no need to have written again, and was this an appropriate use of public resources? They didn't even bother to reply. Typical. I'm just waiting for the paper coming. Not that there's much in it. The correspondence I initiated on the length of the Archbishop of Canterbury's hair seemed to have gone off the boil. Till I wrote up to live letters, nobody's actually spotted it. Various people took up the cudgels until there was an impassioned letter from the rural dean of Halifax, who has a beard, and that seems to have put the tin hat on it. Getting dark. The couple opposite just having their tea. No cloth on. They must have put the kiddie to bed. When I put the milk bottle out, I heard it crying.
A Lingue Originali, Marco Piovaz ha letto per voi in lingua inglese. Lo ritroveremo su Caffè Italia la prossima settimana, venerdì, sempre alle ore 22. Ma Lingue Originali è in onda anche il sabato con Nadia Meroni, con la lettura in lingua tedesca, e la domenica con Barbara Marchand, per quella in lingua francese. Vi ringraziamo per l'ascolto e vi diamo appuntamento a Lingue Originali fra 7 giorni, sempre su Caffè Italia, la radio e il podcast dall'aroma italiano e non solo.
Lingue Originali.